Today we're going to learn to compare and order real numbers. So let's review from yesterday. Yesterday we talked about 7 different sets of numbers. We talked about the natural numbers, which were our counting numbers. We talked about the whole numbers, which are the counting numbers plus 0. We talked about imaginary numbers, which are our whole numbers plus our opposites, or plus the opposites of the whole numbers. So like 5 and -5. We talked about rational numbers, and rational numbers are any number that can be written as a fraction. We talked about irrational numbers, and these are the numbers that when you do the math on them, their decimal continues, but it doesn't repeat, nor does it terminate. The most famous irrational, again, was pi. Another one is the square root of 2. Then you have real numbers. Real numbers are pretty much every number that you know about. Okay, and they are any number that can be put on a number line. And then we have complex numbers, and complex numbers are a combination of real numbers and imaginary numbers in the form of a plus bi, where a and b are real numbers and I represents the first imaginary number. So today what we're going to attempt to do is learn to compare and order real numbers and locate them on a number line. So let's see if we can do that. So if we were to take this set of numbers right here, and I were to ask you to put them in order, there should be a question that pops into your brain. And so what is that main question that you should ask when putting any numbers in order? Good. The first question should be, what order do you want them in? Okay. So there are 2 main orders that we have, least to greatest, greatest to least. Now, since we are doing 8th grade math, how do you think that calculator might help you in order to put these numbers in order? But when we look back at the set of numbers that we have, you'll notice that we have integers, whole numbers, rationals that are negatives, so we've got decimals, but then we also have some fractions in here. So one of the things that would be really nice if we had a set of numbers like this to put in order is, one, we need to know what order to put it in, and then if they were all in the same form. Because one of the misconceptions that people have, especially in 7th grade, is that we look at these 2 fractions right here, especially this one, and we ask, are these numbers simplified? And I'll be real honest, yes, every one of these numbers is simplified. Even -16/5 is simplified. Simplified means the numerator and the denominator no longer have any other common factors other than 1. Okay, so 1 is the only number that will go in these. So 16/5 is a simplified fraction, but most of the time we want to change its form. Okay, to change it to a mixed number or change it to a decimal. And the way we can change that is through division. Okay, so if we were to look at these numbers right here, first we want to change their form. Okay, so one of the things that I would do right here, this -2 3/5, well, 3/5 we know is 0.6, but if I wanted to check that, we could bring up our calculator, and 3/5 just means 3 divided by 5. So we do 3 divided by 5, and that gives us 0.6 as our answer. Okay, so this one right here would actually be represented as -2.6. And we would do the same thing with 16/5. So we type in 16 divided by 5, hit enter, and we end up with 3.2. So in this particular problem, it's going to be -3.2 because it has a negative sign. Now, one of the things that would help us put this in order is a friend called Mr. Numberline. We need to remember that in 7th and 8th grade, 0 does go in the middle. It doesn't go over to the end because we're working with both positive and negative numbers. Okay, so we take this -12 and we put it on the number line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So -12 would be right here. Right? 3 would be on the other side of 0. So we'd put 3 right here. Okay, the -5.5 would be 5.5 or 5.5 to the left of 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So right there in the middle would be -5.5. -8.7 would be just a little bit further. So here's 6, 7, 8. So 8.07 would be right there just to the left of 8. So -8.07. We just said that -2 3/5 was -2.6. So you go 1, 2, just a little over half of that. So -2.6, and then -3.2 would be just to the left of that, which would be about right there, -3.2. Now that I put them on the number line, I can write them in any order that I want. If I ask you to put them in order from least to greatest, we write them from left to right. Negative 12, negative 8, negative 5.5, negative 3.2, negative 2.6, and then positive 3. If I wanted them in order from greatest to least, I would just write them right to left. Okay. Now, one of the things that we have on the 8th grade test, particular, is a lot of times they won't ask you, to put these in order from least to greatest or greatest to least. They'll use some other vocabulary words, such as ascending and descending. And we need to know what those words mean. Ascending means that I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to go up. Okay, so that means I'm going to go least to greatest, or little to big. Or on a number line, it means I'm going to go left to right. Descending just means the opposite of that, and that's kind of to descend means to go down, and that's the way I remember it. So that's going to be greatest to least, or big to little, or right to left as we're doing the math. Okay, so those are two words that we need to know in order to understand the types of questions that we're going to be asked. So let's look at this first question right here that we have. It says, in a golf tournament, okay, the leaderboard posted scores of negative 16, 12, negative 8, 7, negative 4, and 0. What are these scores in ascending order? So this right here is the key, ascending order. So we look up here and we know that that's going to be least to greatest. So if we were to think about these in terms of a number line, we know that it's going to be negative 16, and then negative 8, and then negative 4, because those are our negatives, and then we start with our positives. We've got 0, which would be the first one that separates the positive and negative, and then 7, and then 12. But one of the things that we did in class was we learned how to do this on the graphing calculator by putting these numbers in order. So let's see if we can do that real fast. Okay, so I'm going to clear out my calculator here. Now what I'm going to use in order to sort this is I'm going to use the stat button. So I'm going to hit stat, and I want to put things in a list. So I'm going to do edit. So I'm going to hit enter here. Now I've already got some data in mind, so I need to clear that data out. So I'm going to go up to the top, hit clear, enter, and then all my data will go away from that list. Now all I'm going to do is type in these numbers. So negative 16, enter, 12, enter, negative 8, enter, 7, enter, negative 4, enter, and 0. Okay? Now, granted, this is not a big list to put in order. You could do that by hand, but it was a teachable moment just to kind of show that the calculator can put numbers in a particular order. Okay, so I've got my numbers in my list, so I go back to stat, and you'll notice here we've got sort A and sort D. Well, the A stands for sort ascending, and the D stands for sort descending. So even our calculator has us understanding these two words, ascending and descending. So I'm going to press the number 2 because I want to sort ascending. So sort A. Now I need to tell it where my data is found at, and my data was found in L1. So if you look above the number 1 key right here, you'll notice there's an L1 there, and it's in blue. So we hit the second key in order to get to that. So I get that, I hit enter, my calculator says, okay, I'm done with that. We go back to stat, edit on the list, and you'll notice that our numbers are now sorted in ascending order. So that was kind of a really nice way to show that the calculator will put numbers in order for you. So let's do just a couple more questions here, and then we'll be done for our lesson today. Here's our next one. It says, which of the following lists these towns in order from warmest to coldest? Well, warm to cold on a number line is going to be from right to left. Okay, so this is going to be in descending order. So I need to look at these numbers in descending order. So in other words, the hottest first and then the coldest last. So when we're dealing with negatives, the number that looks the smallest is actually the biggest. So that means Hill City here, negative 6, is actually the biggest number. So when I look down here at the bottom, I'm looking for the one that says Hill City first. So that means B and C. So A and D are both out. So now I look to the next one, and the next one is Waterville. So here's Hill City. The only other one that's got Waterville is C. So there's my answer, C. Okay, so let's look at another one. Okay, here's one that deals with fractions. It says, on a math test, Jason answered 3/4 of the questions correctly. Paul answered 4/5 of the questions correctly. Susie answered 13/20ths questions correctly. And Kate answered 7/10 correctly. List the students in order by name in descending order according to how many questions they answered correctly. So here we're looking at descending as our vocabulary word that we're dealing with. Descending means that I'm going to do big to small. So all of these are fractions, and one way you can compare fractions is to find common denominators. But since we have the use of a calculator, let's just change all of these to decimals. And the way we do that is top in, bottom out. So we've got 3/4. Let's get out of this right here and go back to the home screen. Clear that out. Well, 3/4 would be 3 divided by 4. Enter. Gives you 0.75. Okay. And then 4/5 is going to give you 0.8 when you do that one. 13/20 is going to give you 0.65. And then 7/10 is going to give you 0.7. Okay. Now, one of the things that I like to do when I have decimals here is I like to make them all the same length. So here's 0.75, which has got 2 decimal places. Well, in order to make this one have 2 decimal places, I just add a 0. And on this one here, I just add a 0 as well. Now, when I do that, I can just treat these like regular numbers. Now, since I'm doing this in descending order, I need the one that's the greatest. And the greatest is 80. And the one that represented 80 was Paul. So I look down at my answer choices. I find there's only one that says Paul first. So A has to be the right answer. And we're done. Okay. So here's one more real quick, and then we'll look at just a couple others and see how we would do them, but not actually do them. It says here, given the following rational numbers, order them from least to greatest. So this one says, actually gives us least to greatest, little to big, okay, or in ascending order. So this one, you'll notice each one of these is mixed numbers. 6 7/8, 1 1/3, -2 4/5, -12 1/6. Okay, well, some of these I know, some of them I don't. So we can go to our calculator to help with this. But we need to remember that 6 7/8, what that really is 6 plus 7/8. So the 7/8 is the only part that's being changed to a decimal. Okay, so that means this one right here is going to be 6 point, because it's 6 and 7/8. The and represents the decimal. And then I just go do 7/8. 7 divided by 8. Enter. Enter, and I get an answer of 875. Okay. For 1 1/3, I know that's going to be 0.1 or 1.3 with a bar. Okay. -2 4/5 is going to be -2.8. And I know 1/6, that's going to be -12, and 1/6 is going to give me, okay, so we go to our calculator on that one. So 1 divided by 6 gives me 0.16 with a bar on the 6. Okay, 0.16 with a bar on the 6. So I'm looking these at least to greatest, so which one is our smallest? Well, this one right here, this negative is going to be our first one, so -12 1/6. This other negative one's going to be next, so -2 4/5. And then the 1 1/3 will be next. And then the 6 7/8. And notice we always go back to our original numbers whenever we're putting these in order. Right? So now let's just talk about a couple of these and then see what we would do. Okay? So here's the next one. Oh, this one's pretty interesting. It's got a square root in the thing. It says, Miss Long wrote the numbers shown below on the whiteboard, which is the 4th number when ordered from least to greatest. So in this right here, what we need to do is figure out by decimal which one would be our small ones. Okay? Well, I know this one right here and this one right here are going to be 1 and 2, going from least to greatest. So I really don't have to actually do them to know which one. I know this one of them is going to be 1. I know one of them is going to be 2. Okay, so now I just need to look for the rest of them. Now I know this one here is 2.9, so it's got a whole number in it. This one's going to be just 0.8. So the only one I really need to know about is this square root of 9. Okay? Now the square root symbol, the square root, what it's really asking is, what number can I multiply by itself to get a 9? Okay? And I know that it's going to be 3. Now if we actually do this on the calculator, there is a square root button right above the x squared key. So if I were to press second x squared and then press the number 9 and hit enter, it's going to give me 3 as an answer. So now if this one's 3 and this one's 0.8, I know this is 1 and 2. Well, this one's going to be 3. Now, is this one 4 or this one 4? This one right here is going to be the 4th one. So C is actually going to be the answer. So when we deal with square roots, they're great, using that on the calculator. Okay. And this one right here, you'll notice this one actually has a percentage. Right. So if I were to change this one to a decimal, we need to remember that decimal or percent to decimal is move the decimal 2 places to the left, and you end up with a decimal. And then now I can put that in order. Okay. Same thing for this right here. We're dealing with some fractions. Sorry about that. Dealing with some fractions there. All right, so oh, my board is fritzing here. Sorry about that. So in this one, we've got some fractions here, and we're looking for which number comes between 3/4 and 1/3. And again, we change them all to fractions, and then we can figure that answer out. The last two questions are actually questions that were on last year's STAR test for 8th grade. Okay? And again, these questions here are real simple when you use the calculator, and thank goodness we get to use that. Two numbers are shown on the number line. Which value is not located between these two numbers on the number line? Okay, so we've got the square root of 9 over 3, and we've got 2 pi. Well, we just talked about the square root of 9 being 3. So this really says 3 divided by 3, which is 1. Now 2 pi, we need to actually go to the calculator and find out what that is. Okay, so right above this key right here, this little, what we call the caret key or the exponent key, there's a pi. Okay, so if we were to type in 2 and hit second exponent key, pi, we get basically 6.3. Okay, so I can say that this one is 6.3. So I've got 1 and 6.3. What numbers are between 1 and 6.3? Well, we know pi is going to be approximately 3.14, so it's between, because we're looking for which one is not located between. We just talked about the square root of 9 twice now, and we know that that is 3, so that one works. Okay, so these right here we actually have to do on the calculator to find out. So again, we just saw where that pi was. So right there on that one, pi divided by 9. We end up with 0.349. Well, is 0.34 between 1 and 6? No, it's not. So there's my answer. Okay. One more real quick, and then we're done for the day. I know this lesson's kind of long. I apologize for that. An inequality is shown. 1/8 is less than x, which is less than 18%. Which value of x makes the inequality true? So I'm trying to figure out which one of these values is actually in between 1/8 and 18%. Well, if we go to our calculator and we change these to decimals, it'll help. So this 1/8 I know is going to be 0.125. 18% is going to be 0.18. So I'm looking for which one of these values is going to be between 0.125 and 0.18. Well, I know 1/5 is 0.2, so I know that one is out. But this one's got a whole number with it, so I know it's automatically out. So I'm really just looking at these two right here, 0.09 and 0.02, the square root of that. Well, 0.09, if I were to look at this one right here, 0.09, because of that 0, this one's already a 0.1 and a 0.1, so I know this one is out because it's not in between that. So the only one that could be in between is D. Now if we actually type that into the calculator to see, do second x squared, and then 0.02, hit enter, we find out that it's 0.14, which is between, which is between 0.12 and 0.18. So that one is in between. So that's how we compare and order real numbers and put them on a number line.